Okay, I just finished watching episode 1 of season 2 of Vinland Saga. Spoiler alert. The finale of season 1 was so spectacular, I thought about taking a break, but I decided to just go ahead and go for it. First off, I talked to my son about the beginning songs because there were 2 beginning songs in season 1. Halfway through, they changed it, and I didn't like the change. I liked the first one. And my son told me, he said he liked this one in particular, so I was really anxious to hear it, and it's pretty awesome. I'm actually going to go back and listen to season 1's beginning song and decide which one I like best. But I'm with you. This is a really good song. I like it a lot. Okay, so this one starts out with a guy named Agnar, his mom and his sister. Seems like a completely different story, although it is stitching together the end of season 1, the last episode of season 1. At the very end, they showed some characters. One of those characters ended up being Agnar, so kind of getting some information out of that. So Agnar, his mom and his sister live on this land where they got all this land and huts and a bunch of farmland. And apparently Agnar just built it up, and the dad's gone. I don't know if the dad got killed or died or what. He died somehow. So it's his mom and his sister and him, and they're tending the land and talking. And Agnar, it starts with Agnar trying to chop down a tree, and his mom hits him in the head with the butt of a knife because she's worried that the tree is going to fall into the house. He's chopping down a tree that's right next to the house, and the guy's not, he's a good guy, but clearly he's not, the brightest bulb necessarily. At any rate, they go on and they're talking, and Agnar wants to protect them. He doesn't want anybody, he feels like war is coming, and he wants to protect his family and the land. And his mom tells him they're safe, everything is fine. And of course, that night, or at least it switches from day to night. I don't know if it's the same day, but all their huts are on fire, the land's on fire, they're being attacked. Agnar's mom and his sister in the woods, running away. And as they're running, mom gets hit with an arrow in the back. She ends up dying. A few people from the group that's, pillaging them comes up, sees the sister, tries to take her away. She, as they have her over their shoulder, one of the guys carrying her over his shoulder, she has a some kind of a sharp object in her hair to tie her hair up with. She pulls out, stabs the guy in the back. Guy turns around, slices her with an axe, and kills her. So yeah, this is a happy, fun episode. So Agnar watches his mom die, watches his sister die. He goes after the guy. Guy headbutts him with his elbow, hits him with the elbow in the face, drops him, and drags him off to sell him as a slave. Okay, so the old writing rule is to create a likable protagonist to beat the crap out of him. Well, Agnar definitely fits that bill because he's getting the crap beat out of him at this point. So he's drugged to be a slave. He's on a ship. They're sailing somewhere from northern England. He's a slave in he lived in northern England, and they're being taken away from their homeland. We don't know where yet. As he's on this ship, one of the slaves is coughing. She's sick. Slave handlers are looking at her, and they're like, she's a lost cause. So they toss her overboard. She's alive, but they toss her overboard. So Agnar gets upset at that, and they're like, basically like, look, I need y'all to stay alive and not get sick because you're costing me money. And they're treating them like property, like a slave would be treated, So anyway, they go to the next place. And they line him up, and they're trying to sell him. And Agnar tries to escape. He runs. He gets to this place. He steals some bread. And he gets caught by the slave owners. And they beat the brakes off of him. His face is swollen up really bad. He's bloody. He's dropped. And they use him as an example, telling the slaves, look, y'all away from your homeland. Nobody here is going to help you. You're better off just being a good slave. You'll get fed better than the scraps you'll get if you go on a run. Plus, you're never going to be able to get back to your homeland anyway because you're too far away from it. Anyway, they're basically trying to break their spirits. He heals up. There's another lineup where they're selling slaves, And one of the people who comes up to, they bring one of the guys looking for a slave to Agnar. And the guy looks up, and it's the old dude from Thorfinn's old village. I wish I knew his name. The guy who came after Thorfinn later in season 1. And that Thorfinn was going to go off with in the final episode, but ended up, Thorfinn ended up going back, and the whole mess with the prince and the king and Askeladd. But this old guy's still looking for Thorfinn. He's like, look, I'm pretty sure he got sold as a slave. He's short, he's got blonde hair, his name's Thorfinn. Agnar's listening to all this. And he's like, man, this guy is looking for him. Whoever this guy is that is being looked for is very fortunate to have somebody coming after him. So anyway, another guy comes up and buys Agnar. The old guy from Thorfinn's village goes away. Interestingly, he calls Thorfinn a relative, which I never got that they were relatives. So I don't know if I missed something or what, but I'm curious about that, if he's actually a relative or if he was just calling him a relative because he's so close to him. He's really dedicated to him because of his father Thor's, obviously, but I don't know if he actually is a relative. At any rate, Agnar ends up getting bought by this really cool guy. The guy takes him to his fields. He wants him to help him farm. It's a bunch of land, a bunch of fields. Reminds him of his mom and his sister and where he came from. The guy tells him, most of my slaves and stuff are out, so you'll meet them this evening. He brings them up, and there's a guy walking up. I'm sorry. He brings them up, and the guy calls for Thorfinn. What? So he calls for Thorfinn, and you see they show him from the feet first, walking up, and you're like, oh my God. So they end up showing his face, and he looks tired and worn, hair all over his face. He looks like somebody who lost the will to live, basically. So but he doesn't say anything. He doesn't do anything. And the episode ends with Agnar saying, this is the first time Thorfinn and I ever met. Because, of course, he remembered Thorfinn's name from the guy who was looking for him. And he's like, oh, my God. And he actually said he was about to give in to his plight. He was about to be like, okay, as long as I'm a good slave, I'll get treated well. Everything will be okay. And then he sees Thorfinn. It's almost like it changes. Like he gets like, oh, my God. And I don't know what the change is because that's how the episode ended. But that's a great way to end it because now I want to jump right into episode 2. Part of me wishes I could just binge watch this stuff because it gets really good at points. And this is one of them, like episode 2, I'm really anxious to see in season 2. They did a good job because the first half you're like, okay, is this just a whole new story? Or is this tied into the old story? And then about, maybe 2/3 of the way to the episode, they mentioned Thorfinn when he's, the guy's looking for him and Agnar hears him. It's like, okay. Oops, sorry, I kicked the camera. It's on a tripod, I apologize. And he sees, he mentions Thorfinn, so you're like, okay, so it is tied into the old story. Just got to be patient, wait and see how it flows. So this guy Agnar has been through hell. Watched his mom die, watched his sister die, couldn't do anything about it. Watched the village burn that he had just built up, and now he's a slave. So it's going to be interesting. We already know Thorfinn's backstory and all the stuff he's been through. So these two guys coming together, it's going to be interesting to see what comes of it. Anyway, very good first episode. Really anxious to see episode 2 of season 2.